Welcome to the Blacksmith Chronicles podcast, where faith is forged and scriptures are shaped into your reality. I'm Ryan Johnson, and together we'll embark on a journey through the fire of life, discovering the strength of our beliefs and the resilience of our faith in Christ. In each episode, we'll delve into God's Word, exploring its timeless wisdom and practical applications for our daily lives. Join me in conversations with inspiring guests, challenging messages and topics, as well as the call for modern-day spiritual blacksmiths to arise, individuals whose lives have been transformed by the fire of God's glory. Whether you're seeking guidance, encouragement, or simply a moment of reflection, we want to encourage you to subscribe now, and together, let's forge a stronger, more connected community. Let the journey begin. Stay tuned for another episode of the Blacksmith Chronicles podcast. Hey guys, I'm excited to have this next conversation with a first-time guest from me, someone that I'm getting used to and understanding and getting familiar with. We've had multiple conversations, ironically, through text messages and emails, but never really face-to-face up to this moment, but we will be in the same place at the same time. I want to tell you about this gentleman, first of all, before we bring him on, because he might be the world's most interesting man, or a close second at least. He is a decorated Marine Corps FA-18 pilot. He has flown over 2,000 flights, an instructor, training mission. He's done it all, and he is a best-selling author, international speaker, and I could go on and on and on. But why don't we just go ahead and bring the man in for himself? Without further ado, I want to bring in Mr. Ed Rush. Ed, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation.
What's up, Ryan? It's awesome to be here. So I'm in Southern California today, and you are in Eastern Tennessee. And I told you I hadn't been in your neck of the woods. I've been to Tennessee, but I've never been to your neck of the woods. And 2 weeks ago, I did a keynote speech in Gatlinburg, and I have to say, I kind of fell in love with your little part of the country. So I'm on my way back, man. Just a couple weeks from now, we're going to be hanging out.
I try to tell people all the time that God lives here. You know, they don't understand it. But I can't believe you were in Gatlinburg just a couple weeks ago. If I'd known, I would have ran over and tried to at least had a cup of coffee or something. But I am. Smoky Mountains are a beautiful place to call home.
It was awesome. And yeah, I purposely, I flew into Knoxville, I think, as everybody probably does. But I purposely, the maps gave me 3 options. And I purposely took the long way because I found going through the mountains was that's kind of my thing anyway. Just when you can look on the phone and there's no bars, that I'm in heaven. When there's no bars on the phone, I'm in the place I need to be. So I followed a river all the way back. It was great. So
yeah, I love getting out and hiking in our national park. We only have a little over 16 million visitors that visit every year. We're the number 1 attended national park in the United States. So go figure, right? But listen, here's the thing. The reason I've got you on is because both of us are going to be a part of a very unique opportunity for men and women. And we'll get into a lot of detail about this a little bit later, but I definitely want people to get to understand who Ed Rush is. Like I said, you and I have had text conversation, emails and stuff. We were connected by a mutual friend, Robert Hodgkin. And I've been fascinated. He's been telling me and sharing with me all this information about a Top Gun pilot, the real deal. And first of all, I want to tell you before we go any further, I genuinely thank you for your service. I am a son of a disabled American veteran who served in the United States Air Force. So I have a massive heart for all things military. And I tell people all the time, I do my best to walk in the spirit of the Lord. But if you want to see Ryan activate, talk against our military, and I'll get activated real quick. But that's the son of a vet. But tell us a little bit, who is Ed Rush?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for saying thank you for your service. I really appreciate that, Ryan. Anytime anyone ever says thank you for your service, I was a fighter pilot. I always say, well, thank you for paying for my gas because it was really expensive. And so it's just an honor to be here. By the way, the first thing you should know about me is I failed kindergarten. I always tell people that because sometimes the whole Top Gun thing gets in the way. I have 4 kids, and one of my kids just graduated from kindergarten, and I can tell you it is not a hard subject. And I'm embarrassed to say that I failed kindergarten, but I did make my way into the Marine Corps. Ended up as a fighter pilot, flew F-18s for quite a bit of my life. I flew the F-5, which is one of the adversary airplanes. I flew the A-4 for a while, which is an old Vietnam vintage airplane. I flew a MiG-29, which I did. At the end of my career, I graduated from Top Gun. I was in our weapons school, basically teaching dogfighting, and so that brought me in and out of combat and a lot of those things. But yeah, I left the Marines back in 2006. Started growing businesses. Fundamentally, I'm a business guy, entrepreneur. I've started and sold businesses. I invest in companies. And I teach business owners how to grow, literally how to grow and how to create great products and change the world. And all of this, Ryan, was in the context of me being what most people would call a cessationist. So I literally grew up. I was up until my 30s, literally right around 40, I believed in God. I read the Bible. I was very serious about my faith, but I did not believe that God spoke in any way, shape, or form. I didn't believe that God did miracles, that there was literally, I thought that all ended, at least that's what I was taught. And then back in about 2010, God started to speak to me. And it was kind of a little trippy, actually. Like, I didn't really know what to make of it. And so I brought my little journal and like my little notes, and I brought it to my pastor. We were sitting at Starbucks. And I remember, like, the Starbucks cups are so thin. I remember we had just sat down. My hand was around that cup. It was so hot I could barely hold on to it. And I looked over at my pastor and I said, I'm having like these conversations with God where I'm talking to God and like he's talking back. And my pastor said, "Well, I wouldn't do that." That's the first thing he said. He goes, "I wouldn't do that." And then he goes, "That could get really hokey. That can get really hokey." And I always tell people now, because I teach people how to talk to God. I always tell people now, I say he was right about one thing. It can get hokey. God has got a fascinating sense of humor, and he will say things that don't make any sense, and you have to figure it out. But at the same time, his advice at not doing it was off. And so I kept doing it. And what was happening was crazy, dude. Like I've got this little recliner chair in my office. It's like right over here. And it looks like, if you've ever seen that show Frasier, remember that old guy had that ugly chair? It's this ugly
Yeah.
chair. My wife's like, "When are you going to get a new chair?" I'm like, "I love my chair, man. I logged literally thousands of hours of prayer sitting right in that chair." Okay. And I was sitting in that chair. It was probably about 10 years ago. And as the story goes, I was very serious about my faith, right? So I had this whole sheet of paper that I had laminated like a good Marine, and it had all these prayer requests that people had given me on it. And I had read that passage, the passage where Jesus is like, "Can you tarry with me for 1 hour?" Which I think is pretty commonly misinterpreted to give Christians a guilt complex. But anyway, I read that passage and I was like, "I can tarry with you for an hour, Jesus. You watch this. I'm a Marine. I can do anything." And so I sat down in my chair, I set a timer, and I was going to pray for an hour. That was my goal. I was going to pray for an hour. I was going to pray for an hour. And dude, like 10 minutes into praying, my mind began to wander. And then I got frustrated and then brought it back. And then I was praying again and my mind started wandering. And anybody who's ever tried to pray knows your mind kind of does that, like starts to wander. What was interesting is that day, my mind was wandering to this business deal. I was talking to this people later in the afternoon about something very significant. My mind was wandering to this business deal, and then I was coming back to prayer. And then my mind was wandering to this business deal, and I was coming back to prayer. And dude, it was like 25 minutes into this back and forth that like a lightning bolt had hit me. Oh, wait a second. That's God bringing that up. Like, it wasn't my mind wandering. Literally, God was bringing that deal to my attention. So I took my journal back out and I started listening to God. And he started unfolding to me a strategy. That deal, that afternoon conversation, it turned into a six-figure business deal for me. Okay. And God started showing me how to structure the deal, how to price things, how to have the conversation. And it really blew me away. Up until that point, I thought there were spiritual things and there were earthly things, and there was like church and ministry and like evangelism and discipleship and family, but business is way over here. And you kind of did church, and then the business is over here, and you kind of did church, and then the workout stuff was over here. And all of a sudden, God brought all those things together, and it blew my mind. And literally from that point on, I was getting downloads from God about details of my business. I was having dreams. I was having these prophetic dreams about people that I wasn't supposed to do business with. I didn't know that, like, there were other visions I would get or words from God about how he was going to work through this person and this team member that I was going to have. And it changed like my life. And actually I started making more money, which is awesome. But also I was helping a lot more people, like writing books and sharing a message. But, and this is really the big but part of it. And I wasn't telling anyone. Like, dude, I'm not even kidding you. Other than that pastor, we had left that church. And like maybe like one or two of my friends, I wasn't like, I'm downloading ideas from God about my business and he's giving me pricing and deals. I didn't tell anyone, I told my journal, but I didn't tell anyone. And Ryan, I had a prophet, and y'all, like, the difference when I talk about, like, I'm not a prophet. I'm a prophetic person, but I'm not a prophet. Like you and I both know Patricia King. She's a really close friend of mine. She's a prophet, right? So I had a dude who was a prophet. Okay. A dude was like a South African guy from India, like Indian guy from South Africa. And he came to me, and when people say like, "Thus saith the Lord," like nobody ever uses the King James English. This guy came to me and he goes, I have a word from the Lord for you. And just, for those of you who are listening and watching, as far as the background goes, I have no history in the prophetic stream at all. Like every time I get introduced to somebody, Patricia especially, she'll introduce me to somebody who's like famous, I'm talking about, if I named all these people, you would know who all the names are. And the moment she introduced me, she's like, do you know this guy? I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know anyone. Okay. I have come from the outside world into this world. Like it's very fascinating to me, all the people that I've gotten to meet. Okay. Now, this guy shows up who's like a prophet. I don't even know how to deal with people like this. And he says to me, I have a word from the Lord for you. And I'm like, all right, let's hear it, man. Cause I'm okay with this hearing from God thing. And he said to me, thus saith the Lord. And I was like, this doesn't sound good. And then he said, the next thing he said was, cursed is him. He points at me and he goes, cursed is him who withholds grain. Now, if you're familiar with that, there's a proverb. But all I heard was the word cursed. Because I don't know if you've had anyone say that to you, but when somebody looks at you and uses that phrase and says, he was basically saying I was cursed, right? You catch that? I'm like, whoa. So the first thing I thought was I wasn't giving enough money away. The second thought I had was I'm charging too much. Literally, that's where my mind went. And I was like, so he goes, cursed is the one who withholds grain. And I was like, oh my gosh, lightning's going to hit me or something. And then he goes, what God is saying to you is you have a method for asking him about your business, but you've never told anyone, and you're withholding something that God has given you. And I was like, dude, I repent, and that for me was, by the way, the rest of that verse says, blessed is him who sells it. It's fascinating, by the way, that verse doesn't say blessed is him who gives it away. I think giving is great. Don't get me wrong, but it says blessed is him who sells it. It's such honor, such blessing with the commerce of the world. Like the way that we can do business is just a wonderful blessing. I love business. I love entrepreneurship. Really changes the world. But yeah, dude, that was like the beginning of me starting this little journey of teaching people how to hear from God.
I love it. So let me go ahead and first of all get this out of the way. I graduated kindergarten.
Yeah, man.
I just want to clarify that because my Southern dialect really throws people for a curveball and they think that I don't have an education. Did kindergarten in one round. Nailed that ability to nap when necessary. But no, in a totally different way, I do understand because I did not have the background in prophetic ministry, apostolic ministry, any of that as well. I did not have that for an overwhelming majority of my life. And people sometimes can't understand or comprehend. It is very difficult to articulate something that you do not have the language, much less the vocabulary for. And so when you're hearing or seeing things, it is very hard to describe that in detail that you don't sound hokey. And so it is a challenge for individuals. So I respect that from where you came from in that background, and that I love that story in that. And that's, as you said, it launches you into so many things that you're doing. But one of the things that you're really concentrating a lot on, especially in ministry life, is not only marketplace ministry, not only teaching people how to build, how to establish in different levels of that ability in their marketplace, but you're teaching people how to hear, how to listen specifically from God. One of the things that, and I told you off camera, but for everybody that's listening to this, I had just a couple hours ago recorded with Robert Hodgkin. And one of the things that we had talked about was there are a lot of people that hear things, but they don't take the time to actually listen. And to be able to hear the voice of God, I believe, is something that everybody has. But it's one of those things, do you actually stop and listen to what it is that you're hearing? And so I'm intrigued in this process of what you're doing, and you're teaching people how to hear from God. How does that equate to where we are right now as the body of Christ? Why is that so important for people to know that they are hearing God?
Yeah, brilliant question, by the way. It is, by the way, in my opinion, it is the question. So I'll give you two visions that God's given me. One was quite some time ago, and then one was just recently. The one quite some time ago was actually pretty coincident with that word that I got from that prophet. And the picture that I had, I was sitting in that same old man recliner chair, and I just had my eyes closed. I was just praying, and I literally saw God's face. And when I saw God's face, he was looking at the church. His attention was towards the church, and I literally watched God's entire face turn 90 degrees, and he was looking at the business world. So I saw his attention. The Hebrew word for presence is panim. It means face. So I saw God's presence, his face, literally shift to the business space. And by the way, that was coincident with the same time when at my business events, people started hearing from God. At my business events, people started getting healed. Like literally, I've got more stories than fingers and toes account of people literally getting physically healed at a business event. I started having, I know this sounds crazy when I say this, I literally would have atheists who would come up to me with 2 pages of notes and go, I have 2 pages of notes from God and I'm an atheist, and how does that work? Like that's the kind of conversations that I was having in the business world. The second little picture vision that I had, and I will just tell you, this one hits a little closer to home because it's recent, and it also deals with a connected political event. Okay, and the reason I say that is just as a caveat. I just want to let you know, as you're listening to me, wherever you are and whoever you are, it's okay if you disagree with anything that I say. We can still be friends. Okay, I've changed my mind on a lot of things. I've grown up as a believer, and it's okay for you to take everything that I say and just bounce it off your understanding of God's word and Scripture. But what I will tell you is it was only about 6 to 8 months ago. We were getting ready for 2024, and I was starting to ask God some questions about 2024. You know, what should we expect for this year? What's going to happen? He led me, by the way, to Revelation 3. Revelation 3 says that John says to the church through Jesus, says to the church through John, that I'm going to spare you from the trial that's coming on the earth. And God drew my attention directly to that verse, and he showed me that there's quite a bit of problems that are coming to our specifically to our country, also to our world. And just so you know, these are all answers to our prayer. Okay. So like, I always tell people that, like, we've been praying so hard for our country. We've been praying so hard for reformation. We've been praying so hard that corruption would be exposed and that God's people would start to take leadership. And he's answering those prayers, just so you know, like he is doing that right now. But anytime those big national global prayers start to get answered, oftentimes it comes with big national global times of tumult or suffering. Okay. And God is answering those prayers, and there's some difficult times that are coming ahead. And I started asking God, I teach a lot of God's people. I'm like, how can we come out in charge after this one? Right. Because there's been a lot of like times when there's been these big cataclysmic moments and the bad people are still in charge at the end. And you're like, wait a second, you know? And so how can God's people be in charge? Or more specifically, a lot of the prophets have been talking recently about this wealth transfer. Well, how can we make sure this happens, right? Because it hasn't, not quite yet. How can we make sure that it happens? And what God showed me, literally, I saw this like, boom. I saw this picture of what happened in 2020, and I'm just going to speak directly into that time. Because what happened in 2020 is we had a period of national turmoil that led into a very difficult election for most people, that led into another difficult 3 or 4 months, and quite a lot of confusion, frankly,
Yeah.
because there were a lot of people in this stream that were speaking prophetically about something that didn't happen. And I'm just speaking honestly about it because, like, if we can't talk about it, what's the point, right? And what God showed me was that He gave His church an opportunity in 2020 to really take charge. Okay. And what happened, and I'm just going to say the way that I saw it, and you can interpret this however you want to. What happened was, instead of our gaze being fixed upon His face, to literally listen, like I've got a puppy in my house that looks at me like, "What's up, dude? What's next?" Literally to look at God like waiting for the next order. Okay. What happened in 2020 was, and I'm guilty of this too, just so you know, was we put our faces into our social media accounts. And just so you know, it wasn't even bad people we were following. We were following good people. But just so you know, God didn't want us to hear that word. God wanted us to hear His word. And what He showed me going into this year was He was going to give His people a choice again. They could transfix their gaze upon God and hear from Him and literally be empowered to change the world. Or we could follow the pundits again. Just so you know, those pundits, they were right, but I'll just use the term frequency, if you want to call it whatever. The frequency was a frequency of like anger, frustration, fear. You could feel it. If you read it, you could feel it. And God is love and joy and peace and kindness. And He wanted us to receive that, and we didn't. So we made that a mistake in 2020, which is fine because I'm a fighter pilot, man. We debrief flights. Like, I've made a lot of mistakes in the airplane. No problem. We come back, we get on the whiteboard, we debrief it, we talk through the mistake, we get better. That's what fighter pilots do. And so I'm not being critical. I was a part of this movement too in 2020. I'm just telling you, as a fighter pilot, I'm debriefing. And so what I see the church being called to right now, like today, dude, the day you and I are recording this, the clips just came through like 2 hours ago. It came right over top of you, pretty close, I guess, closer than it did to me. But this is a moment. I'm just telling you, this is a moment for God to get His people's attention and say, "Hey, I'm doing something new right now. Behold, I'm doing a new thing." And if God's people want to take advantage of this and find ourselves in positions of hang on, my camera just stopped there for a second. Let's see if I can. There we go. Boom. I'm back into it. So if God's people are willing really to listen and to gaze at His face, and I'm not talking about like, don't unsubscribe or anything. I'm just saying His word has to be the primary thing. And my mission right now, I teach the world. Like, dude, my events, everyone comes to my events, atheists, Buddhists, Hindus, Christians. But right now, my attention is on God's people, because we need to pay attention, listen to Him, and get ready to move, because we have the opportunity of a lifetime coming up soon. And I'm going to be there ready for it. I hope you are too.
Absolutely. But, as you're talking, you're speaking my language now. Okay. Now we're on the same communication level, but I also, in the background of my thought, begin to hear the individuals that say, how do I decipher what I'm hearing, that it is truly God's voice speaking to me versus other voices, other white noises and stuff? Because, these are some of the things that I'm a part of a school here at our home church, and we're actually just coming out of a whole series on hearing God's voice and knowing it's God's voice. But, this is something that you're teaching on, you're ministering on, you're doing it from a business level, but then you're also doing it from the understanding of the prophetic level. And there are those individuals. I mean, they have to admit, I love what you said. Your gaze became on social media. And unfortunately, I do see that pattern repeating a lot of times. People are still gazing upon, not to play off what you shared earlier, but thus saith social media versus thus saith the Lord. And how would you speak to somebody right now if you had, the next few moments to say, here is the way to dissect, what's the word I'm looking for? Dissect and break apart what is truly God's voice versus that of our flesh?
It's great, dude. It's great. Okay, so the first thing is, thank you for asking the question. The second thing I'll say is, I love dealing with the hard questions. So, like, I talked about the 2020 election, right? I love wrestling with why are these things so. And I will just say, like, one of the questions I love wrestling with is, what happens when God says something and it doesn't come. Like, I've had prophetic words spoken to me, and I've had friends of mine who had prophetic words that for some reason didn't come to pass. I love wrestling with that idea too. But I will tell you, of all the questions I get, the number one question, hands down, without exception, without fail, is how do I know this is God talking to me? It's the number one question. Now, the crazy fun irony of this question is I've had this question asked to me by brand new people who've never even attempted to talk to God before. They're just like starting out. And I've had this question asked to me literally from some of the most God connected people. And if I mention their name, you'd recognize them. And so I will just say that if you're asking this question, you are in great company. It is the number one question that people ask. I think it's probably the most important question to ask. And part of the reason for that is, God, sometimes God will speak audibly, and sometimes he will talk to people through donkeys, and other times he'll talk through a burning bush. But for the most part, the way he communicates is through the still small voice of his spirit. And as you become more mature, and as you get better at hearing God, a lot of times people think the better you get better at hearing God, the more his voice and your voice begin to diverge. And that may be true to a certain extent. But what I will tell you is as you get more mature as a believer, and as you get more mature in your ability to hear from God and to really communicate with him, what ends up happening very strangely is God's voice and your voice actually start to sound really similar. And there's a reason for this. It says in the New Testament, Paul says that we have the mind of Christ, right? Psalm 37:4 says, delight yourself in the Lord and he will give you the desires of your heart. Well, the reason that's true is because as you delight yourself in the Lord, your desires and his desires actually become the same thing. And it's really hard to distinguish the two. And so as you start to walk with God deeper and longer, what you start to find out is your thoughts and his thoughts actually become really similar. And it even sometimes gets harder to distinguish between the two. And so what I will tell you is the most important thing. So first of all, I teach people when they ask me this question, basically two main points. The first thing is, the most important thing for you to do as you approach God with your journal or with your notebook or with your phone, if you're going to type into your phone, if you're going to ask him questions about you, about your future, about the country, about money, about your past, about your kids, about your finances, about your purpose, all the kind of questions I teach people to ask God. The first thing is, as much as you can go, let go any bias and let go of any sort of like even ego around the whole thing. That's the first step. I will tell you, there's a lot of voices in your head. And one of the most important ones to just kind of keep quiet for a little while is your own. Like, for example, I've had people who I'll be sitting there praying for them. And I would say, I would go, the picture that I see for you as I'm praying for you is that God is bringing you into a place which is where he's going to be giving you resources and money is going to be flowing your way. And God's going to be entrusting you with new tools and strategies in your business. And the moment I say money's going to be flowing your way, they go, well, I don't want that to turn me into a bad person. And I'm like, wait a second. We didn't even get to that part yet. Like all I said was money's flowing your way. And you immediately go, I don't want it to turn me into a bad. I said, think about it this way. People ask God for health. God, would you just give me health? They never go, would you give me health? But don't let it turn me into a bad person. God, would you bless my family? But don't let it turn me into a bad person. God, will you bless our country? But don't let it turn me into a bad person. But the moment they mention money, they're like, don't let it turn. I said, what if God giving you wealth actually is the thing that blesses your family? What if it is the thing that turns you into the kind of person that you've always wanted to be? Like, maybe it works the other way, right? So the first thing is get rid of any bias. Just let God speak. Yeah. Like sometimes he just says things and you're like, I don't even know what that means, but I'm going to write it down. So I always tell people, I've said it 1,000 times, write down what you see, hear, sense, or feel without editing. The first thing is get rid of your editor. The internal editor, it gets in the way more times than not. The second thing, and this is really important, is I always tell people process what you're hearing from God with people who you know, like, and trust in a community, So like Ryan, you and I know Robert Hodgkin. He's become a really good friend of mine. And Robert and 3 other guys have become like my go-to team. And I'm not kidding you. It happens every day where one of us will type into this text chat that we've got sitting here. The 4 of us, or 5 of us, I guess, will sit and type on the text chat. Like, here, I was praying this morning and here's what I'm seeing. And then someone will, actually, I heard this and then when you do it together, what you find is it gets better. Oh, he told Robert something. He told my man Mason something else. He told, yesterday I was talking about the country and I was like, I'm praying and I'm seeing all this activity. Like I was just seeing this angelic activity, man. It's like right now, it's crazy what's happening in our country. There is a huge war going on at the moment. And I was telling guys what I saw, and they were like, yeah, this morning I was praying, and here's what I saw. Here's what I saw. And what happened was the more we process it together, the better the revelation got, because we're meant to run in formation like fighter pilots are supposed to fly in formation. So yeah, there's two things. First of all, get rid of your bias. Don't edit what God's saying. Just receive it. The second thing is get in community, and the community will help you from going off the, like sometimes, you've seen in the past, like ministry people, like they'll just, here's what the Lord said to me. And you're like, I don't even think that's even close to what God's saying. Like, so you want to do it in a community because it'll keep you from error too. So there you go.
Yeah. Let me just say, I love the do not edit aspect of it. That is, man, that simple thing right there is so profound to me. And I'm real big. I appreciate what you guys are doing. I'm real big on relationship. I think relationship has to be intentional. You have to be willing to be in it. I didn't know how our conversation would go, but I'm actually wearing one of the things that we say all the time is kingdom is family.
I love that, man.
And this is one of our mottos that we live by in our ministry, is that kingdom is family. And it in order for that to be that way, kingdom has to be greater than your culture, because if culture outweighs the kingdom, you'll never see people as family.
Yeah.
And so we're very much very relational. So I love that you're sharing that stuff. It's so good. Ed, I could keep going and going and going with you. I enjoy listening and hearing your heart on this. But, one of the main reasons that you and I are connected, of course, is Patricia King and Robert Hodgkin. Both of us have been given the opportunity to be a part of a very special event called It's Time. It is a men's and women's event coming up May 3rd and 4th here in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, in the Great Smoky Mountains of Eastern Tennessee. It is being held at my home church, Summit Church in Pigeon Forge. And this special event, it really, all events are special. I'm not discrediting any other event, but this really is a unique opportunity because Patricia had been with us about a year and a half ago, and she said, I'd really like to be able to do a women's event and a men's event together. Robert and I have spent the past few years doing men's events together through Robert's ministry, Men on the Front Lines. And Patricia always had this vision of husbands and wives being able to be a part of the same event at the same time, but having it geared towards strictly men and strictly women. And our campus here in Pigeon Forge at Summit Church has given us that opportunity. The women's part of it, they're going to be in the main sanctuary. And Patricia and Michelle, they're going to have the women's event going on. And then the men, myself, Ed, and Robert, we're going to be in our School of Revival building that we have here on campus. And we're going to be a part of the men's. And this is a 2-day event, technically, May 3rd and May 4th. Nighttime services are going to be open to everyone. So anyone and everyone that is in town and want to be a part of it, you can be a part of it at nighttime, where the men and women are going to come together. We're going to worship. We're going to hear the word of the Lord as well, encourage one another. But specifically on Saturday, May the 4th, the men and women will separate, and we're going to be doing some special things. And part of those special things as well, we're giving men the opportunity to forge their own knife. And some of the men, we've got a blacksmith here on site. He's going to be teaching men how to make their own knife. I took Robert and gave him this experience. Robert forged his own knife. And so we're definitely going to make this happen for Ed as well. But, this is an event you need to register for. So I want to be able to share with everybody, patriciakingministries.com. So if you go there, you can register to be a part of the event. Now, they even beyond the 2 days, okay, beyond the Friday and the Saturday, here's the crazy thing about it. Patricia, Michelle Burkett, Robert Hodgkin, Ed Rush, I'm already here, but they're coming in earlier that week on Tuesday. They're all getting in on Tuesday. You're going to be able to have an opportunity on Wednesday and Thursday to kind of spend some unique opportunities with the leadership team as well and be a part of some things. They're going to Dollywood. Hey, we're hitting up Dollywood. Cinnamon bread. That's where it's at. I'm just telling you right now. But we're going to be there. Ed's going to be there. Robert's going to be there. Patricia's going to be there. And we're going to have community. We're going to have a relationship with one another and get to know one another to be a part of this. So I really want to encourage you to go to patriciakingministries.com. Look into that. You get all the information for the men and women. You do not have to be married to be a part of this event. So if you're a single woman or a single man, you can come and be a part of these events. Register to be a part of them. Again, Friday night, Saturday night, we're going to come together and such. But this is where you get the information. Ed, I am very excited. I get excited to be around former military people in general. Again, I personally did not serve. My father did not want me to be a part of that for numerous reasons and stuff and everything. And so my wife too did not want me to be a part of it. Here's a funny thing, Ed. I got to tell you this story really, really quickly. When I was engaged, going to marry my wife, she said, I don't want you to join the military. I was going to join. I really wanted to join the Air Force. I wanted to follow my father's footsteps. And she said, I don't want to be married and travel all the time and move to all these different places. And so I didn't. I ended up surrendering my call to the Lord. And the funny thing is, we've moved about 12 times, lived in about 4 different states. And I said, the thing that you didn't want, you still had to end up doing, but we did it for military. So go figure. I mean, for the Lord, not the military. Go figure how that works. But saying all that, I'm excited to have Ed to be a part of it. I want him also to share. He does have multiple books and information. I want you to go visit his website at godtalks.com. Ed, share some of those books really quick that people can find about
so
you have available.
Talk about this event. So Patricia King is unbelievable. If you've never heard Patricia, she is anointed for this generation, really the heart of a mom. And her vision to pour out into the next generation is unbelievable. And if you haven't heard her, you have to. You will leave. Like I've heard her speak like 15 times because we've kind of running together. But I had her speak at my event for crying out loud twice. If you've never heard her speak and you want to be inspired to accomplish what God's called you to accomplish, you need to come to this. Second thing is, I've never made a knife, but I'm going to make a knife because at this event, I'm going to be coming in early, leaving late. Like we talked about all the fun things, but I'm heading over to Charlotte after this event's over. I'm going to be interviewed for a show called It's Supernatural, if you're familiar with Sid Roth.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the people in Pigeon Forge are very civil, but by the time I get to North Carolina, I might need that knife. So just making fun of those North Carolina people. So
you'll need it for Sid, especially because I mean his staff never. No, it's a great staff, a great experience. You'll love
man, I am so I can't. They've been so good to me, by the way. And then I'll just tell you, for those of you men watching, get your butts to this event. You're going to leave more empowered. You know, there's sometimes when you go to men's events, I've been there before, where like you leave feeling bad about yourself. This is not going to happen this time. You will leave empowered and strengthened. And if this last 20 minutes has been any indication, if you feel like more ready to go, part of my mission is to take guys and launch them off the front of the aircraft carrier and get you onto what God has for you. Mission, by the way, mission is the most important thing right now for the men in this country. Mission, okay? A lot of times we talk about sort of the activities that you shouldn't do. Look, when you get on mission, you forget all that stuff. When you get on the mission that God has for you, everything else fades away except for the things that are important. So that's really, really key for you to come to this event. The book that's over my shoulder, the website below is called godtalks.com. It is a very simple book that shows you how to enter into a very simple conversation with God. I literally have had atheists use this book and hear from God. And if that's true for them, it's true for you too. By the way, one of the biggest shocking, frankly, for me, things that came out of this book was, atheists were using it. I wrote the book for atheists and skeptics. But what's been crazy is some of the most spiritually connected, spiritually gifted people, if I mentioned their names, you would know these people not only read the book, but did the exercises and had massive breakthrough. And so it doesn't matter where you are on the spiritual spectrum, from like, I have no idea how to spell God, all the way to you've been walking with God for 70 years. This book, there's something really special about this book and what God's doing with this book. And I will tell you, literally, we will sell millions and millions of copies of this book, and you might as well get in the beginning. I'm going to bring some. I sent some to you,
Yep.
Ryan. So if you're coming to the event, maybe I'll just give you one, but like get one anyway. So that you can write a review on Amazon. They're only like $20. Okay. So don't be cheap on your way to success. And the website God Talks has a whole bunch of other resources. If you're in business, we do business events, and I would love to talk to you about your mission and your call in life. I love the entrepreneur space. I love the risk. I love the reward. And I think entrepreneurs right now are changing the world. So it's a blast to be a part of that too. And Ryan, thank you for what you do. I just really honor your mission in the world and just training and equipping people. I love the Blacksmith idea. The fact that we're going to make a knife is even perfect, but the fact that you are forging men and women into their calling and their mission, really outside of the church, I think it's brilliant the way that you're doing it. And I'm excited to just hang out, man. It's gonna be fun. So we're gonna have a good time in Eastern Tennessee, baby. Let's do it.
That's right. It's going to be great. I'm very, very excited about this. Thankful for Patricia and the vision that she had to be able to do this, and Robert as well. I've been privileged to be able to be out there and be a part of their ministry, and to have both of them here to be a part of the ministry here as well. Patricia's been here multiple times. Robert's been here multiple times. So it's a really great connection, and I'm grateful. Ed, if there's something that you could share with just those that are watching and listening, and something that, you could give that snippet, encouragement, whatever it is, I want to give you that time to share that with them before we get out of here.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier, which is this is the time. Okay. 2020, just to be fair, 2020, we got a little blindsided. I think the people in the church, the good people of the world, we got a little blindsided, and that's okay. It's a good debriefing moment. Like I said, I got shot down as a fighter pilot in training before we came back into the debrief room, figured out what went wrong, and went back and tried it again. Okay. I graduated from Top Gun, and Top Gun, the moment you make a mistake, you debrief it, you try it again. Okay. So I know things didn't work out the way that we wanted to. That's okay. 2024 is another opportunity. Whatever year you're watching this is another opportunity, but now's the time to dial it in. Okay. Now's the time to take a good gaze, good long look at God. Just, what I'm doing right now, my personal habit patterns, I am shutting my phone off when I'm done with work at the end of the day. That's about 5 or 6 o'clock at night. It's off. Okay. It is off. I am most interested in what's happening in my Bible, my journal, my conversations with God, some good reading around some topics that are important. And just to put it this way, it's your time. Okay. The event is called It's Time. It's like your time. It is your time to shine. It's your time to get out there. It's your time to write the book, share the message, tell the story, connect to the people. Like, you've been wanting to launch a ministry. Now's the time. Okay. So let's do it. Let's get this thing off the ground. By the time we're done, one of my visions is to buy Disney, literally to put together people to buy. We're going to do it. Okay. It just takes God's people saying, all right, it's our time, and it's your time, and it's our time. So let's do this, man. Let's do this.
Man, geez, May 3rd and 4th can't get here quick enough, because I feel like, the early part of it, some good conversations.
Yeah.
I like to surround myself with people that challenge my thought process. And I really enjoy that you do that. One of the favorite things I believe I heard you say, if I can quote it correctly, is don't be cheap on the way to success.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. What just a really prolific statement of something that is, I just like that a lot, man. I really do. So, Ed, thank you for taking time away from your family, your busy schedule, and everything else that you're going on. I genuinely appreciate it, and very grateful for the kingdom work that you're doing. Grateful to have you a part of the It's Time event soon, and especially be a part of this conversation today. It really has. It's encouraged me, and I appreciate it.
It's awesome, man. It's time. Let's do it.
That's it for sure. Everybody else, listen, we're going to get out of here, but I want you to go visit the websites. Of course, always visit our website, ryanjohnson.us. You can find all of the stuff that we have available for you. Make sure you visit godtalks.com and everything that Ed has on that. And of course, patriciakingministries.com if you want to be a part of the It's Time event for the men and women, May 3rd and 4th here in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. Until we meet again, everyone, be blessed and encouraged in the name of Jesus. We'll see everyone soon. Thank you for joining us on this journey of faith and discovery. Just as a natural blacksmith refines raw materials into something beautiful and strong, so too does our faith shape us into the vessels of purpose and resilience that God created us to be. If you were inspired or encouraged by today's episode, would you please share it with everyone that you know? Let this episode resonate in your heart and in theirs by forging a bond that is common because of our faith, our hope, and our love through the Father. Thank you for being a part of the Blacksmith Chronicles family, and may your days be filled with the reality of the heart that God has for you. Until the next episode, be encouraged and forge ahead in faith.